I trusted him with my life. That's not an exaggeration. In our African village, trust is not something you give easily, and when you do, it means more than blood. For years, everyone knew us as brothers, even though we weren't related. We shared food when there was little, laughter when there was pain, and dreams when reality felt too small. And yet, the day I needed him most, he became the reason my life fell apart. If you had told me back then that my closest friend would one day take everything from me, I would have laughed. I would have said you didn't understand village life. You didn't understand loyalty. But loyalty, I learned too late, can be worn like a mask. We grew up side by side, same dusty roads, same river for bathing, same long walks to the fields before sunrise. When my mother fell ill, he helped carry her to the clinic. When his father died, I stood beside him during the burial, holding him up when his knees buckled. That kind of bond doesn't feel breakable, it feels permanent. As we got older, life became heavier. Farming barely fed us. Every season felt like a gamble with hunger. My friend talked often about change, about business, about investments, about not dying poor in the same village our grandfathers never escaped. I admired that fire in him. I trusted his vision. One evening, as the village settled into silence and cooking fires flickered like small stars, he came to me with a proposal. His voice was calm, confident. He said an opportunity had come, a chance to invest in a joint business involving land near the river. He said a buyer from the city was ready. He said we could finally rise together. I hesitated. That land wasn't just soil, it was my inheritance. But he reassured me. He promised transparency. He promised partnership. He promised protection. And because he was my closest friend, I believed him. That decision changed everything. The paperwork felt rushed, the explanations felt shallow, but I ignored the unease in my chest. Trust silenced my doubts. I signed where he told me to sign. I handed over savings that took years to collect. I even allowed my land documents to be used temporarily, believing they would return to my hands untouched. Days passed, then weeks. The buyer never appeared. My friend became distant. When I asked questions, he told me to be patient, but patience turned into fear. Then one morning, strangers arrived. They stood on my land, measuring, marking, claiming ownership. When I confronted them, they showed documents, official papers. My land, sold, in my name, missing. I ran to find my friend. When I finally did, he didn't deny it. He looked me in the eyes and told me business has no emotions. In that moment, something inside me broke beyond repair. The village whispered. Some pitied me, some blamed me. I went to the elders, but the papers were legal. The betrayal was complete. I lost my land. I lost my standing. I lost myself. I left the village with nothing but shame and anger. The city swallowed me whole. I worked brutal jobs. I slept hungry. I replayed the betrayal every night. But pain does something strange. It either destroys you or sharpens you. Slowly, I learned. Slowly, I rebuilt. I saved small amounts. I met people who valued honesty. Years later, I stood on my own feet again. And then, one day, I saw him. My former friend stood before me, worn down by failure. His success had collapsed. His apologies came too late. I listened calmly. Not because I forgave him, but because I no longer needed his guilt to heal. I walked away knowing this truth. Trusting him cost me everything, but surviving him gave me my life back. Sometimes the heaviest price teaches the strongest lesson.
After the land was taken, the village no longer felt like home. Every path I walked carried whispers. Every greeting felt forced. People didn't need to say anything out loud. I could see it in their eyes. Some thought I was foolish. Others thought I had tried to be clever and failed. In a village, reputation travels faster than truth, and once it settles, it becomes heavier than stone. I stopped going to gatherings. I stopped sitting under the old tree where elders discussed life. My world shrank to silence and sleepless nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father working that land, his hands cracked from years of labor, his voice telling me to protect what was ours. I had failed him. That guilt ate at me more than hunger ever could. I confronted my friend again, hoping, foolishly, that something inside him might soften. Maybe he would admit wrongdoing. Maybe he would help undo the damage. But what I found was someone I no longer recognized. His tone was cold. His words were sharp. He told me I should have been smarter. He said the papers were legal. He said life doesn't wait for weak people. That was the moment I understood the betrayal wasn't accidental. It was planned, calculated, and done without remorse. The elders could do nothing. The law stood on his side, and tradition, which once protected the weak, now stood powerless before ink on paper. I was advised to accept my fate, to move on, to learn from the experience. But how do you move on when your entire future has been stolen? With nothing left in the village, I made a decision that terrified me. I would leave, not because I wanted to, but because staying would kill me slowly. I packed a small bag. I didn't tell anyone goodbye. At dawn, I walked away from everything I had ever known. The city was unforgiving, noise everywhere, faces that didn't care. No one asked about my past. No one offered sympathy. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. I slept in crowded rooms, sometimes on concrete floors. I took jobs that broke my body, lifting, digging, carrying loads heavier than my grief. There were nights I wanted to give up, nights I questioned whether surviving was worth the pain, but something inside me refused to die. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was anger, maybe it was the memory of being betrayed and the quiet promise I made to myself. I will not disappear because of him. Months turned into years. Slowly, opportunity found me, not through shortcuts, but through consistency. I learned skills. I saved what little I could. I built connections the honest way. People began to trust me, not because I asked for it, but because I earned it. And with each small success, the grip of betrayal loosened. I wasn't rich, I wasn't powerful, but I was standing again, on my own. Then fate tested me one last time. One afternoon, in a crowded marketplace, I saw a familiar face. Older, thinner, tired. It was him, the friend who had destroyed my life. For a moment, the past rushed back like a storm. My heart pounded, my hands clenched. He saw me too, and in his eyes, I didn't see victory. I saw regret. He approached slowly, as if I might vanish. He spoke my name softly. His voice trembled. He told me his business had failed, that the people he trusted had done to him what he once did to me. He said he hadn't slept peacefully in years. He apologized. And that was when I realized something powerful. Revenge wasn't necessary. Life had already answered. I listened without anger, without joy, just clarity. I told him the truth, that his betrayal changed me forever, that I lost everything because of him. But I also told him I survived, and that survival was something he could never take from me. I walked away not feeling lighter, but stronger, because sometimes healing doesn't come from justice, it comes from growth. And my story wasn't over yet.
Walking away from him that day felt different from the first time I had left the village. Back then, I was running from shame and loss. This time, I was walking towards something new. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel the need to prove anything. I felt free. For a long time, I thought closure would come with an apology, with repayment, or with public justice. But standing there in the city, listening to the man who once shattered my life, I realized closure doesn't arrive from others. It comes from within, when you finally understand that your survival is already a victory. Life slowly settled into a rhythm. My work grew. People trusted me, not because I spoke loudly, but because I kept my word. Every honest deal, every fulfilled promise felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been stolen. I learned to value caution without becoming bitter. I learned that trust should be built carefully, not blindly. Sometimes at night, memories of the village still returned. The smell of wet soil after rain, the sound of children laughing near the river, the land that once belonged to my family. But those memories no longer hurt the way they used to. They reminded me of where I came from, not what I lost. Years later, I returned to the village, not to confront the past, but to face it. The place looked smaller than I remembered. The roads felt narrower. Some people recognized me immediately, others didn't, but I could feel their curiosity. They had heard rumors. They had heard I survived. I visited my father's grave first. I stood there quietly, not asking for forgiveness, but offering peace. I told him I was still standing, that I hadn't let betrayal erase me, that his lessons lived on through my resilience. Some villagers approached me later. They asked about the city, about life beyond the fields, about mistakes. I didn't speak badly about my former friend. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't require decoration. I learned that betrayal teaches lessons loyalty never could. It teaches awareness, strength, discernment, and sometimes it forces you into a path you never would have chosen, but desperately needed. Before leaving again, I passed by the land that once belonged to me. New structures stood there now. Chuje hands had reshaped it. I didn't feel rage, I felt acceptance, because that land, as painful as its loss was, had pushed me into becoming someone stronger than the boy who once trusted too easily. As I walked away from the village for the final time, I understood something clearly. Trusting my closest friend in that African village cost me everything I had, but it gave me something more valuable in return. It gave me wisdom. And sometimes the heaviest price you pay becomes the foundation of your greatest strength.